Ticklish business any way you look at it. Come on, we'll stick together.
I feel like the ghost of Rex Harrison really doesn't like us because he heard the first take of this episode and was all F you and screwed up our audio so that we now have to record it again.
Twice. Double the Rex, double the fun.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Ticklish Business, or better yet, welcome back to this episode that we had to redo. This is take 2 of our episode on 1967's Dr. Doolittle. As always, I'm Kristen Lopez, joined by the incredibly patient and kind-hearted Emily Edwards. Emily, how are you?
I'm good. Not only did we have to watch a 3-hour terrible movie, this is the second time we are recording about it. As Kristen said, unfortunately, we had a guest in our previous episode and we had a massive technical F-up with those files. So we are storming ahead on our sea snail of life and just making do with very little on this horrible episode.
Our apologies to Nathan Rabin, who was our guest on the original recording. We weren't able to get him back for this episode, but we hope we can have him on again in future. But yeah, we are flying solo on the Lunar Moth, talking about Dr. Doolittle. Yeah, for what I am lovingly calling floppy-wary. Yes. But before we get into that, we would love to remind everybody that we do have our Patreon. It keeps the lights on at Ticklish Biz HQ, pays the bills, keep the podcast flowing, and lets us do all sorts of fun things, like upcoming episode we have with Anne Foster talking about her new book, Rebel of the Regency, some other fun things I'm trying to get in the offing. You get episodes 48 hours early, you get all sorts of little fun swag throughout the year, and patrons are going to be the first to hear about my Old Hollywood walking tour that is going to be happening during Turner Classic Movies Classic Film Festival in April. So it's just $1. You can also vote in our fun listener poll, which is going to be closing soon. We are deciding between 1970's Grey Gardens, 1939's Wuthering Heights, and 1936's Modern Times. So if you have an opinion on which of those movies we are going to record for our next episode, be sure to head over to patreon.com/ticklishbiz to vote. And as always, our Redbubble store is always open with all sorts of fun art that you can slap on a variety of things, including our popular Jean and Judy Makoko art. You can get that on a notebook, on a mug, on a t-shirt, on a whatever. Just head over to redbubble.com and check out Ticklish Biz. And we are now both a video and an audio podcast. So if you're watching on our YouTube channel, thank you so much. If you're listening to this wherever you get your podcast, also thank you. Search Ticklish Business and subscribe to our channel so that we can do more fun video things too, because who doesn't love to see more of our mugs?
Yeah, sure. Like, you can watch as Emily Googles things while talking with her mouth half open like a dead grouper. Like, it's bad.
They're going to call you they're going to create a new animal, Dr. Doolittle style, to explain that, yes. So we're talking about 1967's Dr. Doolittle, directed by Richard Fleischer, based on the Hugh Lofting books of the same name. This is a story about a humble in air quotes, veterinarian Dr. John Doolittle, played by sexy Rexy Harrison, who can, quite literally, as the song says, find a giant snail and goes on a 2.5-hour journey to find said snail. Along the way, he gets arrested for murder. We didn't even talk in the first recording about the weird interspecies erotica that is in this movie, but we will get there. He gets accused of murder, gets sent to an insane asylum, is on the lam. There's a circus somewhere in there.
Right.
And there's a host of other characters that you could care less about. Yeah.
It's true. It is an endless cavalcade of British character actors with really bad makeup, at worst singing voices, and a plot that just aims to suffocate you over the course of 2.5 hours.
Yeah, and this movie will also answer the question, how much must be spent in order to bribe the Academy to nominate you for an Oscar?
Boy, yeah.
Yeah, and the answer is 16 consecutive nights of free screenings on the lot with champagne and dinner. That's what it took.
Yeah.
So yeah, I I had never seen this movie before. I knew that it was one of the most infamous flops. It was also one of many movies cited as ushering in the death of the musical, the death of the studio system as we know it, even though it had already been dying at that point, the death of Rex Harrison's career. A lot of things ended because of this movie. And I understand why, because this movie is not good. It is just so, as Nathan said when we did this episode the first time, it lacks any sense of whimsy and magic. Yeah. It's stodgy in the worst ways. Rex Harrison seems perpetually unhappy, which he was, and everybody else was unhappy because they had to be near Rex Harrison. The effects are rudimentary to the point of being terrifying, and the movie is so episodic that you really do... The plot is simple. He wants to find the snail. But to get to that point, we go through like 18 different adventures that play like various books in the series. And it just makes everything feel very long. All of the songs sound like Willy Wonka first drafts or like Mary Poppins crappy B-sides. It's just bad. It's bad. It's so bad.
It's such a shame because the opening it starts with an overture that is like 20 minutes that you do not expect. And you're like, and it's just dark. And you're like, okay, something could be happening.
You're like,
here,
is this death? I don't know what's happening. I literally was
like, is something malfunctioning on my movie player? And it's like, no, it turns out that was a stylistic choice. And then the annoying part is that the opening credits have adorable animations. The animation for the opening credits is super effing cute. Like, it is adorable. I love them. I'm like, if I ever was cursed with a child, that would be great for a nursery. It is so cute. And then you're introduced to a drunken Irishman and his urchin son, who is not really his son, but for some reason he only takes care of him. And
didn't Oliver Twist teach us that there's always an unhoused person willing to raise another unhoused person's child?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, no, we're getting real deep into British lore in this one. But like, My Friend the Doctor, which is kind of like the first song, and it's sung by Anthony Newley. It's also not bad because Newley is like decent at what he's supposed to be doing. And by that point, I was like, oh, they're overblowing how bad this movie is. And then it takes a stark left turn into Rex Harrison's introduction, and that's when the movie goes off the rails.
Somebody watching this would be like, yeah, you're driving along and then you take a hard right into Crapville.
Oh God, it's so bad.
It's bad.
The second Rex Harrison shows up, you're like, oh my God, why him? Anyone else would have been fine.
Well, I will tell you why him, because the desire was to do a reteam for My Fair Lady. That's essentially the entire reason this movie exists, was because My Fair Lady made money, and the studio thought that this was going to be a reunion. And mind you, I mean, the Dr. Doolittle books were written in the 1920s, and almost right away, the studios wanted to adapt them. Fox was always in the mix with this series. They had tried to buy the rights in 1922, couldn't do it. Disney at one point did try to get the rights for about $7,500 because cheap, and that didn't happen. There had been various people that had that had bought the option and couldn't, for reasons, make it happen. Arthur P. Jacobs was a newcomer producer. He had done right after this, he was kind of finishing up What a Way to Go, which is a great movie, wanted to tell this story, pretty much got the option and said that he was going to reteam My Fair Lady. He was going to get Lerner and Lowe, he was going to get Rex Harrison, he was going to do all this. He didn't have a distributor, so he went to Fox. That was the goal. You know, Fox jumps in, they say this is what we're going to do. Jacobs already had Lerner and Harrison attached. The first of many problems was that he didn't know that Frederick Lowe had retired, and he was not going to do the
It takes a letter
composing.
Or a phone call to maybe like double check before you promise someone.
So they hire Andre Previn, who's going to do the composition. Lerner is going to do the lyrics and the script. I don't know why we thought a lyricist could also be a screenwriter, but that's what they did. A whole year passes, and Lerner ain't got jack to show for this movie, and so they ended up firing him. First of many firings that were attached to this movie, and they brought in Leslie Bricusse. Leslie Bricusse was hot off of his Broadway show, Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. They had wanted to do this as a feature. Somewhere along the line, I think when Jacobs got involved, he wanted to do a musical. One of the worst decisions that ever happened.
It doesn't have to be a musical. It would have been perfectly fine conceptually if they had just played it straight. There's no reason why this has to be a musical at all, aside from like Poppins envy. That is it.
Poppins
That's all it
envy is a huge reason why this movie exists. They wanted the Sherman Brothers, but they couldn't get them away from Disney. And I think that's the thing, is that this is a movie that is entirely chasing trends. This is entirely chasing trends. The musical was already kind of on its last legs in the early 60s. Sound of Music makes all the studios believe that musicals, again, are hot. So the problem is that all the good ones had already been adapted. So they're left with, like, stuff that isn't going to translate off Broadway, or trying to force adaptations like this where the music is just always going to feel ancillary.
Yeah, there's also just a really unfortunate thing that continues to happen in Hollywood, which is that if anything is made for an audience of children specifically, and you are not selling Dr. Doolittle to adults, people really phone it in. And it's not fair to kids. Like, there can be truly excellent media made for children, but by and large, like, we are still in an era where people are like, I'm making this for kids. Kids have only been here for 9 years or left. What do they know? And they just make absolute schlock. And it's so unfortunate because this is insulting to children. It truly is.
It really is. The budget was at $6 million. Everybody remember that number, because we ain't gonna end at $6 million for sure. And Brickus was eventually able to get a script going. I think he said like in 2 weeks. He kind of already had talked to the animals and a couple ideas. He added the Emma Fairfax character that Samantha Eggar plays. Samantha Eggar, I know she just passed, but she's doing her best worst Julie Andrews impersonation in this movie. She's very clipped and short and, hyper English. It's a lot. So they have this whole thing set up. They start looking at directors. And what's funny is they did not immediately look to directors that were known for music. They looked at William Wyler, they looked at George Roy Hill, and they looked at John Huston.
Why would you look for competence? No.
Why would you? I don't know what John Huston was showing you that made you think that guy should make a musical. And they also considered Vincent Minnelli. Minnelli, I think, would have been the best choice.
Yeah.
They settle on Richard Fleischer, who was best known at that time. He had done 1954's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. He had done some other things. He was good with kind of fantasy and adaptation.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Fantasy, definitely. If you've ever watched the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it unfortunately has similar pacing issues as Dr. Doolittle. Again, like in the you could kind of get away with a little bit more of like wow and spectacle because there were science-y fiction-y things that hadn't been done on screen before, and certainly I think we got that in 20,000 Leagues. But man, is that a long movie. That is a long movie.
It is, and I think that we're coming to this point where television has really taken over. We're getting into the end of the 1960s into the 70s. Studios are trying so hard to find any way to increase their longevity, and I don't think it can be ignored that this movie is also coming out in this time of rapid change for filmmaking. We'll talk about what else was nominated for Best Picture alongside this trash movie. And it is showing what audiences I think were gravitating towards, which was quick, punchy, had a social message, Bonnie and Clyde hyper-violent, strong acting, keeps you engaged. None of that is found in this movie. And I think that I don't really know why two movies of this time period, big studio movies, all had the same drab look. They all look like they're filmed on the same sad English sets,
Yeah.
They all have this just sheen of brown. I watched Chitty Chitty Bang Bang during the holidays, and that's a movie I enjoy, but it looks like that's where they filmed Dr. Doolittle. I mean, it just looks like generic, British set.
Yeah, it's all pre-factory Willy Wonka brown. Like, and you're just like, I get why pre-factory Willy Wonka is brown. They exist on cabbage soup. They're all destitute and starving, but like, there's no excuse for that here. Our dear friend, Irish friend, who's never stops drinking. Cannot stress that enough in this movie. Like, he sells meats to animals, and you're like, okay, that's a subsistence living. I totally get it. But like, the kid has a family, the kid has parents. They never show up, but this is not a destitute village that they're living in. It's just a village.
I think that, you look at something like this or Oliver, in the later into the 60s. I don't really know what our hyper fascination was as a country with England, this weird European time span that's like modern but not. And Willy Wonka has the same problem with the fact that there's a lot of Americans that are apparently living in Eastern Europe. Like, why is Charlie Bucket living in Czechoslovakia? I have no idea. But it doesn't fit as as movies become more contemporary. Audiences are starting to question things like, why are you setting things in the places that you're setting them in?
Yeah, it's such an interesting obsession with Victoriana because, I know these books are probably written towards the end of the Edwardian period, but like our concept of everything that happened before QE2 took over in Britain was Victorian England. And we loved the morality of Victorian England, but we never get it right because half the time now when you talk a bit about the Victorians, everybody's super rich and nothing hurts. But prior to 1970, when you set something in Victorian England, everybody is destitute and dying. And it's like, no, there were folk.
And honestly, in Doolittle, they're doing neither. Nobody's destitute and dying, but nobody's like rich and thriving either. This is like these people that live in the weird middle part. Anthony Newley's character, Matthew, is selling meat. We don't know anything else about him. Little Michael Stubbins, the little child that they just let go on their adventures, who has parents allegedly, but they never show up. He's not a Dickensian streetwave, but we don't really know how he's getting his next meal.
No, he's got a kicky little suit, but he apparently doesn't have to go to school. I don't know.
I do love how much emphasis is placed on food in this movie. Like,
yeah.
they sing a whole ass song about vegetarianism.
It's so funny how Dr. Doolittle is queer-coded in this movie. He's a vegetarian. He hates women. He hates his sister. He hates Emma. He hates women. It's extremely queer-coded. But you're looking at Sexy Rexy going like, yeah, but like there's no way that man would knowingly sign on to play a character that is homosexual. So did he just not see it?
It's like Charlton Heston and Ben-Hur. He just was not aware at all that this movie was queer-coded. No, and I wonder how much of that is intentional once they had Rex Harrison and realized all the things they wanted to do, they could not do. Case in point, the Emma character is introduced clearly as a love interest. She's got this enemies to lovers plotline with him at the beginning, and there is a 31-year age gap between Samantha Eggar and Rex Harrison, and boy, does it look like there's a 31-year age gap.
Yeah.
So at a certain point midway through the movie, they introduce the idea that maybe Matthew, Anthony Newley's character, is interested in her. He sings a song that is very flirtatious and sweet, and I'm like, okay, there's some sort of love triangle brewing.
Yeah, he solves a problem for her at some point, and she goes, "Oh, Matthew, I love you," and gives him a kiss on the cheek. I literally was like, thank God they're giving her to him and not Rex Harrison. And it turns out, no.
And it's done in the most awkward way possible. Like 3/4 of the way through the movie, we're almost at the end, thank God. She's like, "I'm telling you that I'm in love with you," and I'm like, wait, nobody got that at all.
Mm-mm.
And he's like, "Oh, I think maybe I might be into you too." Wait, what? You guys have, it's like watching two rocks just like bash against each other. There is no affection. There's no nothing between the two of them. And yet the movie says at the end, he's coming on home to her on a giant moth that is not at all looking like a flying vagina.
What's genuinely shocking to me about that is that the entire fun and games section of the script, which is like, oh, look at the adventure they're on, all these kooky things. She is working like a slave. She is like scrubbing the floors, cooking every meal, like pumping the the air bladders. So when he's underwater with the diving bell on, talking to fish, trying to find this snail, like Matthew is sitting there, eating a sausage or something like that. And she's the one sweating her boobs off,
they
pumping.
get in a shipwreck. They get in a shipwreck because why not just do a Swiss Family Robinson thing while we're at it? Okay, they get into a shipwreck, and he pops up like a cork with Matthew and Michael, and he's like, oh, where's Emma? I don't know, she probably drowned like three yards back. And they're like,
literally says he tied her to a raft, and anybody with like half a brain goes like, and if the raft flips, she just like drowns.
And he doesn't give two craps about whether she makes it. And then they get to the island, and he's like, oh, well, I guess I should go find Emma now. She is dead. She has been dead for several hours. And then she pops out of the forest like, here am I.
There is not even an ounce of maybe he doth protest too much. There is zero flirtation. They treat her like she is a scullery wench. She's
making vegan food.
Movie.
Like, she's learning the fine art of eating seaweed. Like, it's a lot. I mean, of course, Rex Harrison had a lot of input on the script. He didn't have to make this movie. He could have wrote out the rest of his contract, but he didn't. So that meant that they had to do whatever they could to please him. He did not want Samantha Eggar. He wanted Maggie Smith. They had done a movie together previously. And
everybody wants Maggie Smith, but Maggie Smith is expensive.
Exactly. I also think they clearly wanted somebody young and conventionally, like, stereotypically beautiful. Barbara Streisand, though, was also considered, which I was like, where in God's green earth did you think post-Funny Girl Babs was going to do this? But then she did Hello, Dolly in 69, so, I mean, I guess, whatever. Hayley Mills was also considered. That would have been a grosser age gap.
People complain about the age gap in Charade, and that's only, air quotes, 26 years. Like, and it's Cary Grant who can always get it from anybody. So, like, hey, it's believable that she'd be chucking herself at Cary Grant.
Can we talk?
No.
Can we talk about who Rex Harrison does have chemistry with?
Who?
That seal.
Let's talk about the seal.
So,
which is a sea lion, by the way. I just want to get off my chest. That is not a seal. It is a sea lion. You can tell it's got ear flaps. That's all you need to know.
I didn't know you knew you were a sea lion expert. I'm learning something new.
Feed the seals at the LA Zoo.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's so great. We're learning something new about each other every day. But so there is this plot point where he meets the seal, and the seal wants to be reunited with her husband. So his whole thing is he's going to abscond from the circus with her, and he does that by dressing her in women's clothes. Now, if you have seen what a sea lion looks like, there is no way you are confusing a sea lion with a human woman.
They also reek of fish. They are the smelliest animals I have ever been in proximity to, and I've been in proximity to a fair number of weird-ass animals.
So he dresses her in these women's clothes. They go on this journey. He's going to take her to the sea, like Free Willy. But I don't remember the plot point in Free Willy where the kid looks over at the whale and is like, sup, okay? Because
that truly caught me off guard, where he's like, God damn, I wish you weren't married, as though sea lion matrimony is legally binding or in any way reason why this could not work out.
I love that you said, I wish you weren't married, and just didn't follow up with, I wish you weren't a seal either. He starts to catch feelings for this sea lion and sings a song that is a romantic ballad. And I think at one point does end the song with, I wish you weren't a seal. Like, the only problem is you're a seal.
Yeah, that's the hard and fast line.
And they share a smooch.
Yeah, he goes ham on that poor little seal puppet.
And then he gathers her up and throws her off the dock, and everybody thinks that he has murdered a woman. And he goes on trial.
Which, again, like, magically, they do show that the dress and the wig and the hat have come off once the seal has, like, splooshed into the water. From, like, the White Cliffs of Dover, we should point out that he is hucking this seal off of, like, a 40-story cliff. So there's no way even a sea lion is surviving that. But thankfully, they do show that, like, once she hits the water, she's not bound in petticoats in order to, like, drown in, like, whatever sea he threw her into.
I was shocked. I was shocked and appalled that there was clear interspecies erotica being presented to me without any warning. There was no trigger warning.
No, there was no guess whatsoever that that was going to be on the table. Because, like, he's got the parrot Polynesia, which, you know, in Polynesia, parrots are good talkers. Macaws are not nearly as good as African greys, but, like, they can talk and they understand context and everything, but they don't, like, talk.
No, Polynesia is like ChatGPT. I mean, she's always talking.
Yeah. She's smarter than the doctor. By leaps and bounds, she just does not have opposable thumbs.
I mean, there were supposedly 1,300 different animals on the set of this movie.
That doesn't shock me.
Which is utterly ridiculous to think about. The obvious things that you would expect with that many animals on set did happen. They would go to the bathroom everywhere. They would go to the bathroom on the actors. And I think anybody, you know, peeing on Rex Harrison.
Well deserved.
Good for you guys. You know, they get to England. They have all these animal actors hired. And I can't stress enough. Fox had already been through this with a bad, lengthy production with Cleopatra. They had survived that. And then they greenlight this. With Cleopatra, you understand why the production was so, you know, over budget because of the length of time. They had to stop shooting. Liz Taylor almost dies at one point. The chaos of the Burton-Taylor relationship, money, you know, the opulence,
and
all of that.
Everything is lush. Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
like you can see where the money went.
With this, it is all brutal incompetence on everybody behind the scenes. So it's just ridiculous, you know, so they...
like a number of things. I was a radio producer for ages, and I used to have to do on location shoots and things like that for the radio show. I've done a bunch of like production and things like that. Most of the time, you just kind of keep tally of how much you're spending, and you know what's gonna go wrong. You do. You're like, oh, that's gonna be the thing that gets me. Like, let's just pencil that in and hope to God it doesn't go wrong. And then when it does, you're like, ah, thank God I saved an extra $5,000 for that. Woohoo, I saw this coming. And I'm just like, how did they not see any of this coming? Like, exactly. This is just bad production.
They're filming in this small town in Wiltshire. The locals hated them because they covered up pretty much any contemporary stuff in their town. I think they wanted to like dam a stream or something. They had a bunch of different things that they wanted to do. So they already had a lot of people that were angry. They're filming this in the summer, which is rainy in England. Yes, so the animals that they were using ended up getting sick. The animals that they wanted to use, they realized you have to quarantine animals to bring them into the country. And so they had to spend more money to rent animals once they got there. And they also realized...
Like England has a spare giraffe on staff that you can just like call them up. Jeffrey, get on down here.
They also had trouble corralling the animals, so they had to do a scene with a bunch of squirrels, so they decided to do what you would always do with a squirrel. They gave them alcohol to try to make them, you know, pliant, and they ended up passing out.
I can tell you, when I grew up, I had a tree that overhung my house that had like walnuts. It was a walnut tree. And in the summertime, the walnuts that are still kind of around, they ferment because they have like fruits on the outside of them. And so squirrels would eat the fermented walnuts and like fall drunk out of the tree and like not have any idea what was happening. And drunk squirrels is not a good combination. Weirdly enough, I can speak to that from fact. Like, it is not a good thing to have drunk squirrels anywhere near you.
Courtesy of Ticklish Biz, friend of the podcast, Mark Harris's book, Pictures at a Revolution, he said that production had to be shut down for 3 days when, quote, the giraffe stepped on his own expletive deleted. So where is that movie about the behind-the-scenes making of Dr. Doolittle that involves drunken squirrels and giraffes stepping on their own junk?
Yep.
I would love to see
appendages.
That. I would love to see that.
I can honestly say, while I was watching this, you know, they're shooting things in farmyards. They're shooting things on not sets, not closed sets. And there were so many times where they would like release an animal. I'm thinking of the fox kits specifically. And the fox kits would go running off. And I was like, how are they corralling those foxes from just running off into the forest that's right there? How are they actually keeping track of these animals? Because they're not exactly old enough to be trained. Did they just lose 40 foxes while doing this?
I'm assuming they had animal trainers, or like animal handlers, like you rent foxes.
Yeah, but like you can't even get your own cat back in the house after it gets loose without like leaving your dirty laundry outside and stuff like that.
Can we talk about how often the real animals look even odder placed against the weird attempts to get fictional animals in this movie? So you talk about the fox kits scene where Doolittle is talking about how he has all these foxes and he's got the mother. And what they end up doing is
it's so offensive.
It's
so disgusting.
They have the real live fox kits, and they do have a real adult fox. But in the sequences where Rex Harrison has to handle the adult mother fox, which I'm assuming was not a good idea, so they told him that you're not going to do it, they put in this animatronic fox puppet that, I'm not kidding, looks so disturbing because it looks like it's dying. It looks like it's just like
absolutely a taxidermed fox that they took. Like, there's no other way it could be anything but they had a taxidermed fox, took the fur and skin off of the form for the taxidermed fox, and like put it on like a puppet so he could like hold it.
And it's just
so
like
repulsive.
Spasming like throughout the entire interaction.
It's got dead eyes.
Yeah.
It's like really creepy.
And then you have it against the little babies where you're like, yeah, and it's just disgusting. And then at a certain point, Dr. Doolittle is gifted with this fictional animal called a push me pull you.
In the second most racist introduction of a character in this entire movie.
Exactly, which is just two alpacas fused together in the center.
Yeah. It's like cat dog, but alpaca. They have no butt.
And it's obvious that it is two men, I'm assuming they were men, in, like the donkey costume that you had to wear as a kid where like somebody had to be the rump and then the other person is the front. And it is just so disturbing. It's like an uncanny valley thing in that I know these are people in a suit pretending to be an animal. It's like when you watch a guy in an ape costume and you just know it's not 100% real.
Do the eyeliner around the eyes so you can always see it. Like if you ever watched the movie Congo, which came out in the 90s and it's terrible, like they don't actually like do anything to darken the human skin around the eyes underneath the gorilla mask. Oh, look at that gorilla. I mean Steve. Like he's just a guy in a suit every time. Yeah. It's so weird.
And then once they find the great sea snail, it just, the inside looks like the inside of Genie's bottle. And it's just this dead-eyed boat contraption. Like, there's nothing magical about it. It looks like dead, like, ride vehicles at Disneyland.
It really does. The oddest thing about choosing to make it a snail, to me, is that, like, there's no child in the world that goes, my dream animal that I want to meet is this enormous gastropod. Like no child in the world is like, ooh, hooray, I get to see something that looks like a living booger. Like it's just disgusting. Like nobody wants a snail. If you were like giant whale, fine, great, sold. Kids like whales, kids like dolphins, kids like unicorns, kids like any other mystical animal in the world, but you went with a snail.
I love it. I mean, I love it, I hate it. So
it's so weird.
It's so weird. We haven't talked about Rex Harrison, and there's a lot to talk about with Rex Harrison. Rex was who they wanted. Rex was not known as a singer, but he was going to sing live. That was a big caveat for him, and they did have to spend even more money once the movie was finished to record his music live on set. And so they had the composer come out and conduct the orchestra. Even more money to spend. Harris had a lot of leverage with the cast. And in terms of casting, and he had people that he really wanted. He did not want Anthony Newley. He wanted David Wayne, of all people, to play Matthew. And he spent a lot of the production making anti-Semitic remarks about Anthony Newley and calling him, quote, the Cockney Jew. Because why not?
Why not?
Supposedly he was, Rex Harrison had a penchant for getting into drunken fights with his then wife, Rachel Roberts. So that was going on. And he also hated the script, hated the lyrics for all the music. At a certain point, they considered replacing him. And
like anybody with half a brain would try to get rid of him.
They considered replacing him with either Peter Ustinov, Alec Guinness, or Peter O'Toole. Peter O'Toole, you're getting just Rex Harrison with more pickled.
Yeah. Like I am not really the world's biggest fan. Second guy. Alec Guinness. Thank you. I'm not really like the world's biggest Alec Guinness fan, but like would have been better At least he understands the assignment. Peter Ustinov would be my suggestion. I mean, like, he would at least be lovable in some capacity.
They eventually approached Christopher Plummer because whenever you need a replacement, Christopher Plummer's kind of it. It made sense. He was hot off of Sound of Music. He had a decent singing voice, but he did not have an issue with being dubbed. And they hired him. And it turns out Rex Harrison was like, I don't want to be replaced. I'm willing to fall in line. That ended up being kind of a lie. And they paid Christopher Plummer his full fee to GTFO.
Best gig Christopher Plummer ever had. The pay or play contract.
So let's talk. They have a $6 million budget. They've already paid to import animals, replace an actor, bring in an orchestra to record the actor they wanted to replace live. And that wasn't all of it. So, Rex Harrison, I think, we'll get to some of the other things Rex Harrison forced on the production, isn't just bad. He's actively unpleasant.
Yeah.
I've done an episode on My Fair Lady. You can find it somewhere in the archives. I hate that movie. Sorry, I think I don't hate it as much as I hate this, but I don't like it. And I don't tend to like Rex Harrison in anything. Blythe Spirit, I think, is the because
he's passable because he's
yes.
supposed to be awful.
Yes.
Like, you're supposed to hate him.
Surrounded by other characters, he is not the main focus. He's not the central character of the narrative. And here, he just seems so unpleasant. He's got one expression. He seems uninterested in everything that's going on. And there's nothing, like you said, warm about him. There's nothing that makes you think, like, this is a country veterinarian. And, I can just see Rex Harrison after they say cut, being like, what the hell am I doing? I'm sitting here snorting like a pig and, making all these stupid noises. I'm a thespian, damn it.
Yeah. I was like, of all movies for him to like stay to fight to be in, I kept watching this and I was like, he's grunting like a pig, he's barking like a dog, he's making all these animal noises. And I was like, there's no way that he didn't consider this an affront to his dignity, knowing what I know about Rex Harrison. Like, he must have hated every second of this. Like, they must have been paying him so much money.
Yeah. The rest of the cast doesn't have a whole hell of a lot to do, and they're kind of mired, Anthony Newley is just kind of playing, like, the chocolatier guy from Willy Wonka, who just has a bigger part. He's just the guy to encourage everybody. Samantha Eggar is just got a lot of big hair pieces. Her hair gets bigger, as do her hats. At a certain point, she's just the girl.
Yeah.
There's no one else to watch but Harrison, and he's just actively bad.
Absolute wet blanket. Every time he does interact with someone who's not the two other adults on the snail with him, like, he's so offensive. And I don't understand why you would necessarily. I've never read the Dr. Doolittle books. I know, as you mentioned, that they are full of every single thing you don't like in literature, so I've never actually read them. But I'm like, surely these books must have had Dr. Doolittle be at least genial. But he conflicts and confronts every single other person he comes in contact with throughout this entire movie. There's no reason for anyone to like him. And as best as I can tell, it's Matthew in the beginning. He's got this sick duck, and he's like, all right, this is how Dr. Doolittle is introduced. He's got this sick duck, and he's like, we have to take him to Dr. Doolittle because Dr. Doolittle can fix any animal. And as far as I can tell, that is the only reason why we like Dr. Doolittle, is because, Matthew is like, I value animals, and if I value animals, I have to take them to Dr. Doolittle. And then Dr. Doolittle does everything in his God-given human power to be like, I would push you down a flight of stairs, but at least you take care of animals. That's it.
And I think too, watching this movie, if you look at somebody like Mary Poppins, Julie Andrews in that film, the stiff upper lip British sensibility it can be warm, like Julie Andrews in that movie, even though she's very prim and proper and practically perfect in every way, there is a love in her that you feel, even if you're looking at, I'm trying to find a male counterpart to that, and I can't think of one. But I'm sure it exists. It just doesn't exist in Rex Harrison.
Yeah.
And I do wonder how much personal, like what we know about him factors in. Although, I mean, so the third act of this movie, they end up washed up on this island, and they encounter quote unquote the natives, which are a group of
womp
womp womp, which are a group of African people that are living in this, I would call it utopia, because they're living in this world without white people that are educated off of the books of shipwrecks that come through. And their leader, William Shakespeare X, played by Jeffrey Holder, says white men don't stay on this island long because they can't handle the peace and quiet, which I thought was really, really funny.
I love that he says white men, not white people.
Yeah, white
men cannot handle the peace and quiet.
Exactly. And I thought that we were going towards something really progressive until the island starts moving and it eventually hits the tip of Africa, because they're like, the island actually got sliced off from Africa and it's now reunited. And I was just like, so we're saying it's like South Africa? Is that what we're saying? Like, geographically, where did we end up here?
Madagascar actually did, but we're not gonna but no, it's definitely like, it's a commentary on race, not geology, unfortunately.
Sure. But of course, even with that character, Rex Harrison had opinions. They originally had cast Sammy Davis Jr., and Rex Harrison said, no, I wanted a real actor, quote, not a song and dance man. So they again paid Sammy Davis Jr. to GTFO, and Sammy Davis Jr. considered going public and suing Rex Harrison for being a racist prick. And he didn't. So then they approached Sidney Poitier.
Was this around the same time that Sammy Davis Jr. was being threatened with murder for being in a relationship with Kim Novak?
I think this was after.
Oh, okay.
But it might have been the same time. I think it was after, though. So they approached.
Still, you can imagine why he was like, I'm not going to press my luck. Yeah.
They approached Sidney Poitier. This is 1966. And he says yes, he'll do it.
Hey, Sidney.
Exactly. Yeah. I hope it was a really nice payday. So he was going to do it, and they hired him. And at a certain point, they said, well, the script, we need to save some money. And so we're eliminating the character that was Prince Bumpo, who is in the books. They said, originally they'd expanded the role to account for Poitier's star power and said, well, we need to cut costs. So we're reducing the role to what it is in the finished film. And they paid Sidney Poitier to GTFO. So all of this is just utterly, utterly ridiculous. They are just paying people to leave. And Jeffrey Holder, later came out and said that he was routinely kind of given racist abuse by Rex Harrison's entourage, and that again continued to turn the cast against him. And Jeffrey Holder, I think, is really good in the part that he is given to play, even though it is clearly meant as a refutation. I think that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
A refutation of Hugh Lofting's depiction of black people in the books.
It's still pretty friggin' racist.
Yes.
Jeffrey Holder just is the producers are very lucky that Jeffrey Holder just has a natural air of being regal. And he's just that voice, that carriage, that movement, he's so incredible. He was an incredibly accomplished dancer in New York City. He was originally from Trinidad and Tobago, just absolutely integral in the Black cultural life of New York City with his wife. Just absolutely wonderful actor. Everything you ever see him in, you're like, why wasn't this man like so much more famous? Like, why wasn't he just like Paul Robeson too? He's just so incredible whenever you see him. You mostly know him from being Baron Samedi in Live and Let Die, which is another horrifically kind of racist movie. So Brits, be kinder to our dearly departed Jeffrey Holder, who deserves so much more. But also, like, he knew what he was doing for his own community and within his own community. So maybe he was just like, I'm going to take your money and do whatever and put it towards good use by creating a robust Black theater culture in New York City.
When Dr. Doolittle did come out, the press latched on the fact that the books were extremely racist. They were written in the 1920s. What's interesting, and by interesting I mean kind of hypocritical, is that Hugh Lofting was a very staunch animal rights activist and very much an anti-war activist, but he was also espousing a lot of racist stuff in his books.
It's not unusual for some people who are very staunch animal rights activists to also kind of value animal life more than non-white humans. It is something that you run across actually quite frequently in like rescue communities and stuff like that. And it's really, really crappy. As someone who is hopefully actively anti-racist and also a pretty big fan of animals, I'm always like, let's suffocate that a little bit, fellas. Like, let's do better
Exactly.
here.
But people did start pulling out, sections from the book. And I'm going to quote from this article called The Political Incorrectness of Dr. Doolittle, which actually is very much an article that is like, woke is ruining books. So bear with me there. But they do emphasize what some of the books were espousing. So, and at a certain point in the late 80s, Hugh Lofting's son did allow for the books to be revised and re-released. So a lot of this has been changed.
I'm going to talk about this in a second as soon as you're done.
But in the books, at a certain point, Polynesia tells Doolittle that, she can quote, or in talking to African characters, she quote, and this is a quote from the book, she says that she, quote, knows these darkies. That is a quote right there.
Eesh.
There is a sequence with a bunch of lions where they are talking about a lion cub and the lions are using the N-word. Why would lions know that?
Don't like that. Nope.
Don't like that. And of course, there's a plot point in one of the books where Crown Prince Bumpo tells Doolittle, if you will turn me white, I will give you half my kingdom. And Doolittle ends up making this potion that temporarily turns him white, and Polynesia, because Polynesia is way more racist in the books, says that it doesn't really matter because he'll still be ugly no matter what color he is. So, yeah. And by the way, this article...
Get bent, Polynesia.
This article that includes all this stuff ends the article by saying, why are we caring about a book that was written in the 1990s when there are black children living in poverty today?
Good grief.
But
truthfully, yeah. I will say, so the original pressing of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, whatever title you want to know it by, depending movie or book. So the original Oompa Loompas are actually not how they are depicted in the printings now, where they're just like little people. In the original books, they're actually, and I'm not kidding, they're African pygmies is how they're referred to. And so they're actually like a race of small African people. And like Dr. Doolittle, the estate of Roald Dahl actually, air quotes, allowed them to be made less offensive and less racist as the years have gone on. So they get re-edited. And whenever you remind people that Roald Dahl was a deeply terrible, horrible person and also extremely racist, people get really upset at you when you remind them about that. And I actually read the unedited version first when I was a kid because I'm old and my library is from like the 1960s or 70s and it hadn't been updated yet. And I remember being like, are we really like talking about a book that, is talking about essentially performing human experiments on African people that were shipped somewhere in steerage? It's like, it's every single bad thing you can imagine when you're talking about people being taken out of Africa. And people who never read that version or didn't know that version exists get really pissed off. And I'm just like, no, it's epidemic in a lot of these British children's books that they are awful. They're terrible.
All of that is to say that when this movie did finally end, when it finally finished shooting, it was 39 days over schedule, and the production had pretty much ended at about 15 to 17 million, depending on what you read.
Woof.
Yeah. It started at 6, we ended 17. And we know where that money went. It went to everybody else.
Could you imagine doing anything? $11 million over budget. Like even in today's Hollywood, if someone was like, here's a cheap little feature that we want you to do, we're giving you $50 million. If you come back and you're like, I spent $61 million instead of the $50 million you gave me, you would not work again unless you were white and male.
They do a test screening in 1967. It's a huge disaster. The biggest complaint was that it was too damn long, so they cut a couple verses of some songs. They cut one song out entirely. And right around this time, a woman named Helen Winston, she was a Canadian actress that had bought the option on Doolittle years before. She was gonna make it. She had written a script, and when she saw the movie, she realized that a major plot point at the end of the film is that the animals go on strike, which is what allows Doolittle to come home, because they drop the charges. And she realized that that was a plot point from her script, so she sued the studio for $4.5 million. And you would think, I don't know, that this would be some sort of easy fight for the studio to do, but they realized when they talked to Leslie Bricusse, he said, I thought that was a plot point from the book. I read the original script. I thought that it was a book plot. I didn't realize it was an original plot. They had no legal defense, and they had to pay her $4.5 million.
This is so funny to me. This is desperately funny to me. The amount of vetting that anything has to go through now, like legally, is pretty incredible. Oh my God, I could not imagine screwing up that badly. Like that badly.
I would have loved to have seen video of them being like, Leslie, is this what happened? And he gives the equivalent of the shrug emoji and is like, sorry.
Oopsie-daisy.
Exactly. Of course, the movie gets released. The Jungle Book was their main competition. It had already been out for 2 months, but it had really great reviews. So they were
And it had Peter Ustinov.
It did. And of course, the press start coming out talking about this book racist. So the movie needed to make $31 million at the time to be a hit. And it opens with with 16.3. It lost $11 million for the studio when all was said and done. And the reviews are just fantastic. Bosley Crowther at the New York Times said, quote, the music is not exceptional, the rendering of the songs lacks variety, and the pace is slow and without surprise. Time summed the movie up as, quote, size and a big budget are no substitute for originality and charm. And I also want to quote Bernard Dick, who wrote the Golden Age musical, where he writes, Dr. Doolittle is a musical in the sense that it is a movie in which people sing. Most of the songs do not so much as move the plot forward as stop it periodically. So it was a massive bomb, and Fox didn't really have any other movies they could promote for Oscars. Valley of the Dolls had made some money, but it was critically savage. So they had no choice but to really promote this. And at the time, their competitors at Warner's and Universal were also championing musicals. So, like I said up top, they made 16 consecutive free screenings for the Academy members with dinner and champagne, and the movie ends up getting 9 nominations. That's how you buy an Oscar, sir, ladies and gents. Like, that's how you do. That's how you do. I mean, it did win 2. It won 2 Oscars for the song Talk to the Animals for Best Original Song. And
what was that up against? I have to know.
I can tell you. It was also nominated alongside visual effects, but let me get to...
Good grief.
I find Best Original Song nominations to be so indicative of the time.
Yeah, it's like, how many Marvin Hamill-ish is in there?
So here's a fun irony. You want to hear a fun irony? The song won for Best Original Song. Leslie Bricusse was not present at the Academy Awards. I don't know, maybe he was still smarting over having to pay $4.5 million. Do you know who collected the award on his behalf for the song? Sammy Davis Jr.
No.
Yes.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
So other nominees for Best Original Song that year were Thoroughly Modern Millie from the musical Thoroughly Modern Millie. That was a Jimmy Van Heusen, Sammy Kahn song. The Look of Love from Casino Royale, the Burt Bacharach banger. For the song The Eyes of Love, in case you get that confused, from the film Banning, that was a Quincy Jones joint.
Okay, that's always deserved.
And The Bare Necessities from The Jungle Book.
Wow.
Nobody's heard that song. Who's heard that song since?
Wow. Like, which is a great song. I mean, let's get
great song.
It's a
great.
top Disney song.
And in case people are curious, it was nominated for Best Picture. Thank God did not win. But it did showcase to audiences how out of touch the Academy was becoming at that point. The other nominees for Best Picture were Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and the winner, In the Heat of the Night. I am sure Sidney Poitier was thanking his lucky stars that he did not play Prince Bumpo.
Seriously. Aside from the fact that filming, we know that Sidney Poitier filming in the heat of the night was not a pleasant experience. Like, that movie did so much, along with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, to truly like shove America in a good direction. It's like, let's go down with in history as making a truly monumental like civil rights movie instead of this heaping pile of snail. Like, it's absolute garbage.
Richard Fleischer was really the only one that I think came out well after this movie. He continued to make movies into the late 80s and transitioned pretty smoothly from doing big budget musicals of the 1960s to doing big budget action films of the 80s. He did Red Sonja and some other things.
So not good big budget action
no,
movies.
Not good big budget. He also did the 80s remake of The Jazz Singer with Neil Diamond,
Oof.
So he was trying some new things, but Rex Harrison, his leading man bona fides, if they ever existed, were pretty much destroyed. He went and stuck to other smaller parts, worked on the stage a lot, but this movie's so terrible. It's so terrible. Eli and Love aside, we did not also mention that when they filmed on the island with the sea snail, everybody was dealing with gastroenteritis because of improperly cooked snail. So they see this giant ass snail in the water, and they said the locals were throwing rocks at the snail. Again, where is the making of the documentary about this movie? Because I would love to see all of this.
It's so true. It's so true. This is just, the estate of Rex Harrison has to be like suppressing this, like any sort of book about the behind the scenes, because any moment you read about this, even just doing a Wikipedia cursory view, they're like, he verbally abused everyone on set, cost too much money, and was probably drunk most of the time. And it's like, great children's fare.
Look, sometimes gold happens, okay? Half the films of Oliver Reed, have proven to us that sometimes you can do all that and strike gold, okay? Yeah. But sometimes you're Rex Harrison and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Overall, this movie is bad.
It's just bad.
And again, Fox almost went bankrupt. You would think that they would have learned their lesson with Cleopatra, and they just kept at it until Disney eventually bought them. So Jungle Book won in more ways than one.
Also,
at the end of the day. But this movie's not good. It's just an unpleasant watch. It's boring. There's nothing interesting. If I were a kid, I would have been bored, let alone being an adult. Like,
yeah. I remember seeing it as a kid, but I think maybe only snippets of it because I don't remember being tortured this badly.
It's bad. Listeners, you can let us know what you think about Dr. Doolittle, Sexy Rexy, sea lions, sea snails, I don't care. You can email it to us oldschool@ticklishbiz@gmail.com. You can also drop it to us via all social media platforms. We're at ticklishbiz everywhere except Twitter, where we are at ticklish_biz. We'd like to again shout out Nathan Rabin, who we unfortunately weren't able to record with, but he did a great job on our first go-round of this episode. Please consider buying his books, including The Fractured Mirror, which is a new book that he just put out. You can follow him on social media as well, and we hope to have him back in the future. As always, you can follow me wherever you are on social media. I'm at Kristen K. Lopez, except Instagram, where I'm at Kristen Lopez 88, and my site is The Film Maven, where I talk all about entertainment. Right now, I'm writing a lot about Wuthering Heights. You can do that over at thefilmmaven.com. And my book, But Have You Read the Book, is out in stores already, but Volume 2 has a date. But Have You Read the Book, Volume 2 Romance Edition comes out July 28th. You can pre-order that now, and I hope to do a lot of press for that once it comes out. In my book, Popcorn Disability is All About Disability in Film, is out now. You can also buy that wherever you get your books, or get it from your local library. Books are expensive. Emily, where are you online? Tell us about all your things.
I am mostly on my website at Ms. Emily Edwards. That's MS Emily Edwards. Across Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok at the same handle, Ms. Emily Edwards. We went with continuity here. It's much easier to find. I have a mostly weekly newsletter called Silver Screen Sleuths, where I talk about social issues and movies through the lens of mystery fiction and mystery movies. That's really, really fun to do, and it would be great if you could sign up there. It's just hosted on the website. It's not like on Substack or anything like that, so find it at MsEmilyEdwards.com. I also have 3 mystery novels out. It's the Girl Friday series. You can find them wherever books are sold in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. The audiobook is actually really good, and you can find those at your local library as well.
Yay! And as always, we'd love to remind you to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/ticklishbiz, where we have our listener poll going up. I can't actually tell you what our next episode is because we are deciding between 1939's Wuthering Heights, 1936's Modern Times, and 76's Grey Gardens, so drop a vote there. You also get episodes early, you get swag, you get all sorts of stuff, and you get to support 2 amazing female creators talking about old Hollywood. That's at patreon.com/ticklishbiz. And we will have a bonus episode coming soon where we are talking to Anne Foster all about her book, Rebel of the Regency. That's going to be really fun. I think we're going to be talking, weirdly enough, about a Regency era film. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So be on the lookout for that. We will be back with a new episode soon. Till then.